Welcome to Crazy HOA Moments. This one escalated fast in the front yard. I am standing in my side yard in Duluth, Minnesota, holding a post hole digger, and Shirley Lee is screaming at me from 6 feet away with a clipboard in one hand and a megaphone in the other. She is the safety committee chair for the Rosewood Property Owners Association, and she is demanding I remove the digger immediately because it has been visible for 5 minutes and violates the clutter ordinance. I set the digger down carefully and ask her to show me the specific rule. She snaps the clipboard toward my face and says, "I do not care what you think, I care what the rule says." The notice on the clipboard has today's date and a fine schedule that starts at $200 and doubles every week. I moved to Duluth 6 months ago after my Army discharge to use the GI Bill for night classes at the community college, and I took a logistics coordinator job at a shipping company on probation status, which means I cannot miss work for HOA hearings or I lose the job. The Rosewood Property Owners Association is the kind of neighborhood where the compliance chair carries a ruler and a stopwatch, and Shirley is the worst of them. She has gray hair and a pixie cut, a white light jacket, a red baseball cap, and that megaphone she uses to make mailbox announcements when someone parks 2 inches over the curb. I bought this house because it was affordable and close to campus, and the fence along the property line was in decent shape except for one post cap that cracked in half during the spring thaw. I ordered a replacement cap and planned to swap it out this weekend, but I needed to check the post stability first, so I brought the digger out to test the soil. Shirley saw it leaning against my porch and called it an eyesore within minutes. She is still yelling. She says the violation notice is final and the fine starts tomorrow unless I move the digger inside my garage and submit a work plan to the board. I ask what a work plan is. She says it is a written document describing the scope, timeline, materials, and contractor credentials for any exterior work. I tell her I am replacing a post cap, not building an addition. She says the rules do not distinguish, and if I do not submit the plan by 5 p.m. tomorrow, the fines escalate and I am barred from doing any work until I comply. I feel my jaw tighten, but I keep my voice calm because losing my temper will not help. I ask if I can submit the plan by email. She says no, it has to be a printed copy delivered to the HOA office in person with a $50 processing fee. The HOA office is only open during my work hours, and my probation supervisor already told me I cannot take personal time for the first 90 days. I try to explain this, and Shirley cuts me off. She says I do not need proof. I have paperwork and vibes. That line hits me like a slap. I realize she is not interested in solving the problem, she is interested in creating one. I move the post hole digger into my garage and close the door. Shirley nods like she won a battle and walks back to her house 2 doors down. I go inside and pull up the HOA covenants on my laptop. The clutter section defines clutter as items stored visibly for more than 72 hours, and I had the digger out for 5 minutes. I screenshot the section and email it to the HOA management company with a polite request to cancel the violation. The next morning, I get an auto reply saying the management company is understaffed and responses may take 5 to 7 business days. The fine deadline is tomorrow. I call the office and get voicemail. I leave a message explaining the situation and asking for an extension. No one calls back. That afternoon, I get home from work and there is a second notice taped to my front door. This one says I failed to submit the work plan and the fine is now $400, and I am prohibited from performing any fence work until I attend a compliance hearing. The hearing is scheduled for next Wednesday at 10 a.m. I am supposed to be at work. I text my supervisor and ask if I can take 2 hours off for a personal matter. He replies that personal time is not available during probation and missing a shift is a performance issue. I feel the walls closing in. I need to fix the fence before the weather turns. And I need to keep my job, and Shirley is using the HOA rules like a weapon to make both impossible. I decide to call a fence contractor to see if having a licensed professional do the work changes anything. I find a local guy named Eddie who has good reviews and does small repairs. He comes out that evening to look at the post. He agrees the cap is cracked and the post itself is stable, so we just need to pull the old cap, clean the top, and glue a new one on. The job will take 20 minutes. He says he can do it Saturday morning for $150. I ask if he has dealt with the Rosewood HOA before. He says he has, and he warns me they are difficult. He tells me to get written approval before he starts or they will fine me for unauthorized work. I show him the violation notice. He whistles and says Shirley is notorious. He has had clients where she called the city inspector, the police, and the management company all on the same day over a hedge trim. He offers to write up a scope letter I can submit as the work plan. I thank him and we schedule Saturday at 8 a.m. I print Eddie's scope letter and drive to the HOA office Friday at lunch, taking the risk of being 10 minutes late back to work. The office is a small room in a strip mall next to a dry cleaner. A bored woman behind the desk takes my $50 check and the letter without looking at it and stamps it received. I ask if this cancels the violation. She says the hearing will determine that. I ask if I can reschedule the hearing because I cannot miss work. She says I can submit a written reschedule request with a $25 fee, and the board will decide. I do not have another $25 to throw away, so I leave. I get back to work 12 minutes late, and my supervisor gives me a warning. He says punctuality is critical during probation and another late arrival will trigger a review. Saturday morning, Eddie shows up at 8 with his truck. We walk to the fence and he pulls out the old cap. It comes off clean. He wipes down the post top and applies construction adhesive. We are about to set the new cap when Shirley appears at the property line with her megaphone and her handheld radio. She is wearing the same white jacket and red baseball cap. She has a clipboard. She says, "Stop work immediately. You do not have approval." I tell her I submitted the work plan and paid the fee. She says the plan was rejected because I did not include proof of contractor insurance. Eddie shows her his insurance certificate on his phone. She says it has to be a printed copy notarized and submitted 72 hours in advance. Eddie looks at me and shakes his head. He has dealt with this before. He says he is not going to keep working if she is going to call the city. I ask Shirley to let us finish because the adhesive is already on the post. She says, "I do not care what you think. I care what the rule says," and she radios someone on her handset. 2 minutes later, a tow truck pulls up to the curb. The tow driver gets out and walks over. Shirley tells him to tow the contractor's truck for unpermitted commercial activity. The driver looks at Eddie's truck, which is parked legally on the street, and asks Shirley if she is the property owner. She says she is the safety committee chair, and she has authority to enforce parking rules. The driver asks to see the parking rule. Shirley flips through her clipboard and shows him a page. The driver reads it and says the rule applies to overnight parking, and it is 8:15 in the morning. He says he is not towing a legal vehicle without a police order. Shirley's face turns red. She radios again and says she is calling the police for trespassing. Eddie has had enough. He caps the adhesive tube, puts the new cap on the post, and tells me he is leaving before this turns into a bigger mess. He says he will email me an invoice and I can pay him when it is safe. He drives away. Shirley is still on the radio. I go inside and text my ally, a city code enforcement officer named Marcus I met at a neighborhood meeting last month. Marcus is a city employee, not part of the HOA, and he has no patience for HOA overreach. I explain what just happened and ask if Shirley can legally call a tow truck on a contractor doing permitted work. Marcus texts back that she cannot, and if she keeps doing it, the contractor can file a harassment complaint with the police. He says he will stop by this afternoon to check the fence himself so I have a city record that the work is compliant. I thank him and feel a little bit of the pressure lift. At least I have someone on my side. That afternoon, Marcus shows up in his city truck. He is a black man in his 50s, calm and thorough. He inspects the post cap, measures the fence height, checks the setback from the property line with a tape measure, and takes photos. He says the work is compliant with city code and the fence is not on an easement. He gives me a printed compliance letter on city letterhead and tells me to keep it for the hearing. He also mentions that if Shirley keeps harassing contractors, I should document every incident because the city can issue a cease order if there is a pattern. I ask him if he has dealt with her before. He says yes, and she has been warned twice for filing false code complaints. He says she uses the word safety to justify harassing people, but most of her complaints are baseless. I feel a little better knowing the city sees through her, but I also know the HOA hearing is still coming and the fine is still on my account. I spend Sunday preparing for the hearing. I print Marcus's compliance letter, Eddie's scope letter, the insurance certificate, the HOA covenant section about clutter, and a timeline showing I had the digger out for 5 minutes. I also print the email auto-reply from the management company showing I tried to resolve this before the fine. I put everything in a folder and rehearse what I am going to say. I know I cannot miss work, so I email the board on Sunday night and ask if the hearing can be rescheduled to 6 p.m. on a weekday. No response. Monday morning, I get an email from the HOA management company. It says my work plan was incomplete and I performed unpermitted work, so the fine is now $800 and I am required to remove the new post cap and restore the fence to its previous condition within 72 hours or face additional fines. I read it 3 times. They are telling me to put the cracked cap back on. I forward the email to Marcus and ask if they can legally require that. He calls me. He says no. They cannot require me to make the property less safe, and if they try to enforce that, I can file a complaint with the city and possibly sue for negligence. He suggests I show up to the hearing with all my documents and make them explain their position on the record. I tell him I cannot miss work. He says then I need to get the hearing moved or send a representative. I do not have a lawyer, and I cannot afford one. I decide to record everything from now on. Minnesota is a one-party consent state, so I can record conversations as long as I am part of them. I download a recorder app on my phone. Tuesday evening, Shirley shows up at my door with her clipboard and her megaphone. She says the board reviewed my work plan and denied it because I did not disclose the cracked cap as a safety hazard in advance. She says I am required to file a safety incident report and pay a $200 incident fee. I turn on my phone recorder in my pocket and ask her to clarify. She repeats that I failed to report the crack, so the work I did is unauthorized and the fine stands. I ask why I would report a crack I am actively fixing. She says, I do not care what you think, I care what the rule says, and the rule requires advanced reporting of any condition that may affect property values. I ask her to show me that rule. She flips through the clipboard and points to a section about hazardous trees. I say a cracked post cap is not a tree. She says the principle is the same. I thank her and close the door. I have the whole conversation on audio. Wednesday morning, I call in sick to work. I hate doing it, but the hearing is at 10 and I cannot reschedule. I drive to the HOA office. The hearing is in a conference room behind the main desk. The board president, a man named Dale, and 2 other board members are sitting at a folding table. Shirley is there with her clipboard and radio. Dale asks me to state my case. I hand out copies of all my documents and walk them through the timeline. I explain that I had the digger out for 5 minutes. I submitted the work plan. I paid the fee. The contractor had insurance, and the city code officer confirmed the work is compliant. I play the audio of Shirley telling me to report the crack in advance even though I was fixing it. Dale listens. One of the other board members, a woman named Paula, asks Shirley if she called the tow truck. Shirley says yes because the contractor was performing unpermitted work. Paula says the work plan was submitted before the contractor arrived. Shirley says the plan was deficient. Dale cuts in and says the board will discuss and issue a ruling within 10 days. I ask if the fine is suspended pending the ruling. He says no. I leave feeling like I just wasted a sick day and nothing changed. That afternoon, I get a call from Eddie. He says someone filed a complaint with the city about his truck being parked illegally on Saturday, and he had to waste 2 hours proving it was false. He asks if it was Shirley. I say probably. He says he is not coming back to my property because the hassle is not worth $150. I do not blame him. I thank him for finishing the cap and I pay his invoice online. I am now out of a contractor, $800 in disputed fines, and 1 sick day. I feel trapped. My job probation ends in 6 weeks, but the HOA is threatening collections if I do not pay by the 1st of the month, which is 9 days away. That night, I go through the HOA meeting minutes on the association website. I find a complaint log from last year. One entry is written in the exact tone Shirley uses, describing a mailbox post that was 4 inches too tall and calling it a flagrant disregard for community standards. The entry is unsigned, but I recognize the phrasing. I screenshot it, then I find another entry about a contractor parked on the street for 11 minutes, described as loitering and commercial trespass. Same voice. I realize Shirley has been filing complaints under the board's name for months, maybe years, and no one is checking her. I text Marcus and ask if unsigned complaint logs are valid for enforcement. He says no, complaints have to be signed and dated by the complainant, and anonymous complaints are not enforceable under most HOA bylaws. I check the Rosewood bylaws. He is right. Every complaint has to include the name and address of the reporting homeowner. The log entries I found are unsigned. I email the board and attach the screenshots. I write that I am requesting a formal review of all complaints filed by Shirley Lee in the past 2 years, and I am disputing my fine on the grounds that the complaint was unsigned and invalid under the bylaws. I cite the section number. I hit send at 11 p.m. The next morning, I get a reply from Dale. He says the board will review my request and respond within 15 days. I reply that the fine deadline is in 8 days and I need a suspension until the review is complete. He says he will bring it to the next board meeting, which is in 3 weeks. I feel my chest tighten. They are stalling. I call Marcus again and explain the situation. He suggests I file a formal records request with the management company for all signed complaints related to my property. Under Minnesota law, HOAs have to provide records within 10 business days. I send the request that afternoon via certified mail. I also request copies of all meeting audio recordings from the past year. If Shirley has been using the HOA to run a personal vendetta, I want proof. Friday evening, I am in my backyard installing a motion-activated floodlight on the fence near the property line. I want a record of anyone coming onto my property, because I do not trust Shirley. It is dusk, breezy, and the porch lights are starting to turn on. I am up on a stepladder adjusting the light angle when Shirley walks into my yard from the side gate without knocking. She has a flashlight in her clipboard. She says she is conducting a safety inspection, and I need to provide access to the fence line. I climb down and ask if she scheduled this inspection in advance. She says the safety chair does not need to schedule. I tell her she is on my property without permission and I am asking her to leave. She says the HOA covenants grant the board inspection access. I pull out my phone and start recording video. I say, "You are trespassing, please leave now." She sees the camera and her face changes. She says, "You cannot record me without consent." I say Minnesota is a one-party state and this is my property. She turns and leaves, but not before saying the floodlight is a violation because it was not pre-approved. I send the video to Marcus. He replies that Shirley just committed trespass and if she does it again, I should call the police. He also says the floodlight does not require HOA approval as long as it does not shine onto neighboring property, which mine does not. I feel a small surge of confidence. I am building a case, piece by piece. Shirley is making mistakes, and I am documenting all of them. I kept my hands open and my voice calm, because the real move was still ahead. If you want to see how I turned the tables on Shirley and the board, hit that subscribe button, because the next part gets wild. Saturday morning, I get the records I requested from the management company. They send a PDF with 15 pages of complaint logs. 8 of them are signed by Shirley. 3 are unsigned. The unsigned ones include the complaint about my post hole digger. I also get 2 audio files from board meetings. I listen to the August meeting. At one point, Shirley is talking about a contractor parked on the street, and she says, "We have to make an example or everyone will think they can do whatever they want." Another board member, Paula, asks if the contractor was doing anything illegal. Shirley says no, but the optics are bad. Paula says they cannot find someone for optics. Shirley snaps back, "Then what is the point of having rules?" The conversation moves on, but I have it recorded. Shirley just admitted on tape that she wanted to find someone who did nothing illegal. I spend the rest of Saturday building a timeline. I cross-reference the complaint logs, the meeting audio, the violation notices I received, and the emails from the management company. A pattern emerges. Every time Shirley files a complaint, the management company sends a violation notice without verifying the facts. The board rubber stamps it. No one checks if the complaint is valid. No one asks for proof. It is a conveyor belt designed to generate fines, and Shirley is running it. I also find something else. In the September meeting audio, Shirley mentions calling a tow company to remove a vehicle from the guest parking area. Dale asks if she got board approval first. Shirley says she did not need approval because it was a safety issue. Dale says that is not how it works, and she needs to stop unilaterally calling tow trucks. Shirley says, "I do not need proof, I have paperwork and vibes," and someone laughs. But no one overrules her. She keeps doing it. Monday morning, I get an email from the management company. It says the board reviewed my dispute and the fine is upheld because I failed to provide advance notice of the post-cap condition. The fine is now $1,600 because it doubled over the weekend, and if I do not pay by Friday, they are sending me to collections. I feel my stomach drop. I call the management company and ask to speak to someone. I get transferred 3 times and finally reach a manager named Lisa. I explain the whole situation. She listens and says she will review the file and call me back. She does not call back. I decide to go nuclear. I request the tow company dispatch logs for the day Shirley called the truck on Eddie. I call the tow company and say I am trying to verify a service call for a legal matter. The dispatcher asks for the date and address. I give it to her. She pulls it up and says the call was placed by Shirley Lee, who identified herself as the HOA president. I say Shirley is not the president, she is the safety chair. The dispatcher says the caller claims she had authority to request the tow. I ask if I can get a copy of the dispatch record. She says I need to submit a written request. I send an email with my request and a $20 fee. 2 days later, I get a scan of the dispatch log. It shows Shirley requested a tow for unpermitted commercial activity and claimed the vehicle was blocking an easement. Both claims are false. Eddie's truck was on a public street, and there is no easement there. I have a tow company dispatch log that shows Karen requested the tow without legal authority. I now have everything I need. I have unsigned complaints. I have meeting audio proving Shirley wanted to make an example of people. I have the city compliance letter. I have video of her trespassing, and I have the tow dispatch log proving she lied to a tow company. I write a 10-page appeal with attachments. I cite every bylaw violation, every procedural failure, and every false statement Shirley made. I attach the dispatch log, the unsigned complaints, the meeting audio transcript, Marcus's compliance letter, and the video. I email it to the entire board, the management company, and every homeowner email address I can find on the association website. I send it at 9 p.m. on Thursday, the night before the collections deadline, so Shirley and the board wake up Friday morning to an inbox full of proof and every neighbor asking questions. Friday morning, my phone blows up. I get texts from 3 neighbors I have never met saying they had no idea Shirley was filing false complaints and they are furious. One neighbor, a retired teacher named Diane, says Shirley filed a complaint about her trash cans last year and she paid a fine without fighting it because she assumed the HOA was right. She says she is going to demand a refund. Another neighbor says Shirley threatened to tow his contractor last month and he canceled the job. I feel a wave of validation. I am not the only one. At 10 a.m. I get a call from Dale. He sounds tired. He says the board held an emergency meeting this morning and they are suspending all fines pending a full review. He says Shirley has been placed on administrative leave from the safety committee and they are hiring an independent investigator to audit her complaints. He apologizes for the situation and says the board did not know the extent of the problem. I ask if my fine is canceled. He says yes, and they are issuing a correction email to all homeowners. I thank him and hang up. I feel my shoulders relax for the first time in 2 weeks. That afternoon, the HOA sends a correction email retracting the smear. The email says the board identified procedural errors in several recent enforcement actions and is conducting a comprehensive review. It says homeowners who received fines in the past 6 months can request a reevaluation. It does not name Shirley, but everyone knows. My inbox fills with replies from neighbors thanking me for exposing the problem. Diane sends me a bottle of wine. Marcus texts me congratulations and says he is not surprised. He dealt with Shirley for years and he is glad someone finally stopped her. The independent investigator contacts me the following week. She is a lawyer who specializes in HOA disputes. She interviews me for an hour and I give her copies of everything I collected. She says my case is one of the clearest examples of HOA abuse she has seen, and the board is likely going to face pressure to remove Shirley entirely. 2 weeks later, the board announces that Shirley has resigned from the safety committee. The announcement does not explain why, but the neighborhood group chat is full of speculation. Someone posts a photo of Shirley moving out. I do not know if she sold her house or just could not handle the fallout, but she is gone. The HOA schedules a mediation session in early November. I meet with Dale, Paula, the investigator, and Lisa from the management company. They present a settlement. The mediation ruling confirms my fence placement and orders Karen to stop contacting my contractors. The board agrees to reimburse me for the $50 work plan fee, Eddie's invoice, the records request fee, and the tow dispatch fee. They also agree to revise the complaint process so all complaints have to be signed, dated, and reviewed by the full board before enforcement. I sign the settlement. It is over. I finish my night classes in December and pass my probation at work in January. The new safety chair is a retired firefighter named Tom, who actually knows what a safety hazard looks like. He stops by in February to introduce himself and asks if I have any concerns. I say no, everything is fine. He says if I ever have trouble with the HOA again, I should call him directly. I thank him. I do not think I will need to. The fence is solid. The post cap is on tight. Marcus stops by in the spring to check a different property and he waves at me from the street. I wave back. Diane brings over cookies and says the neighborhood feels different now, like people are not afraid to push back anymore. I agree. Shirley's timeline is proven false with timestamps, and the correction email is still pinned in the group chat as a reminder. The whole thing taught me that HOAs only have the power you give them, and if you document everything and stay calm, you can beat them at their own game. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.